On March 18th, Iranian ballistic missiles struck Ras Laffan industrial city in Qatar. That facility is the single largest natural gas complex on Earth. It supplies roughly one-fifth of the world's entire natural gas exports. Iran launched 5 missiles. Qatar intercepted 4. The 5th got through. Qatar Energy confirmed fires and what it described as extensive damage to the complex. This was a direct response. Hours earlier, Israeli warplanes had struck Iran's largest gas reserves on the planet in an operation that was coordinated with and approved by the Trump White House. Iran watched its own gas infrastructure burn. It answered by hitting Qatar's. Then Trump posted a public statement saying Israel had acted out of anger, that Washington knew nothing about the attack, and that Qatar was in no way involved. The same strike that 2 separate officials confirmed Washington had approved in advance is now a strike Washington claims it never knew about. Iran told the world what was coming before a single missile was launched. Iran telegraphed exactly what it intended to do. The IRGC published a target list explicitly naming energy facilities in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. The message was not subtle. These facilities would be struck within hours, evacuate immediately. Then they followed through, and Ras Laffan was not being struck for the first time. The facility had already been taken offline since March 2nd when earlier Iranian drone strikes forced Qatar to shut down all gas production entirely. That shutdown alone sent European gas prices surging 50% overnight. Now there is structural physical damage layered on top of a facility that was already dark. This is not something that gets restarted by flipping a switch. Every day of physical damage adds months to the repair timeline. Qatar's gas output, 1/5 of global supply, is not returning to operation anytime soon. Qatar's response and Trump's threat. Qatar's diplomatic response was the sharpest move the country has made since this war began. The foreign ministry declared Iran's military and security officials persona non grata and gave them 24 hours to leave Qatari territory. The official statement called the strike a flagrant violation of sovereignty and a direct threat to national security. Qatar formally reserved the right to act in self-defense under international law. Trump's statement went considerably further than simply distancing Washington from the South Pars strike. He publicly threatened that if Iran strikes Qatar's gas facility again, the United States would, with or without Israel, deliver a level of destruction to the South Pars gas field that Iran has never seen before. That is the President of the United States openly threatening to destroy the largest gas reserve on the planet. A reserve that sits directly above a shared underground deposit that Qatar also draws from. The country he claims to be protecting shares that same formation. The wider damage across the Gulf hours after Ras Laffan was struck. Abu Dhabi shut down the Habshan gas facility and the Bab oil field after debris from intercepted Iranian missiles fell on both sides. No casualties were reported. But here is what makes Habshan critically important. It is the starting point of the 248-mile Abu Dhabi crude oil pipeline, the ADCO line running from Habshan to Fujairah. That pipeline handles an estimated 1.5 million barrels per day. It is the UAE's only oil export route that bypasses the Strait of Hormuz entirely. When Habshan goes offline, the bypass route disappears with it. Iran also struck or attempted to strike targets in Saudi Arabia's eastern province, home to the kingdom's major oil fields. The UAE Ministry of Defense reported intercepting 10 ballistic missiles and 45 drones in a single day. 5 countries struck in one 24-hour period. The largest LNG facility on Earth extensively damaged. The UAE's Hormuz bypass route threatened. Saudi refining capacity disrupted. That is the true scale of what March 18th represented. The 48 hours that explain everything to understand why Iran escalated to this level on this particular day, you need to look at what happened in the 48 hours immediately before. On the night of March 17th, Israeli airstrikes killed Ali Larijani, the secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. That title does not fully capture who this man was. Larijani was the most powerful surviving official in the Islamic Republic after the assassination of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei on February 28th, the opening day of this war. A former senior Israeli security official described him plainly since Khamenei's death. Larijani had been managing Iran's war effort and serving as the chief coordinator across all of Iran's security bodies. He was 67 years old. A veteran political operator with deep connections across Iran's political, clerical, and military establishments. He had previously led Iran's nuclear negotiations with the West between 2005 and 2007. He had served as Speaker of Parliament. If any single person remaining inside Tehran had the institutional authority and the relationship network to negotiate a ceasefire with Washington, it was Ali Larijani. Israel killed him alongside Brigadier General Gholam-Reza Soleimani, the commander of Iran's Basij paramilitary force. Iran's Supreme National Security Council confirmed both deaths. The statement also confirmed that Larijani's son, the head of his office, and several of his personal guards were killed in the same strike. Netanyahu went on television and publicly celebrated Larijani's killing. On the same day, Trump told reporters he did not know who to negotiate with inside Iran. The United States says it cannot identify a negotiating partner while simultaneously approving or supporting the assassination of the only figures who possess the stature and institutional backing to fill that role. 3 of the foremost senior Iranian officials killed in this war had direct connections to the civilian government, the IRGC, and the clerical establishment. They were the connectors between institutions. They are gone. Less than 24 hours later, Israel struck again. Intelligence Minister Esmail Khatib was killed in a precision airstrike in Tehran. 3 senior assassinations in 48 hours. Israeli Defense Minister Katz then made a statement that deserves to be read exactly as it was given. Israel's policy is clear and unequivocal. No one in Iran has immunity and everyone is a target. In Tehran, thousands of people filled Revolution Square for the funeral procession, chanting through the streets. Grief was converting into a national demand for retaliation in real time. Iran's new supreme leader issued a public statement. Every drop of spilled blood comes at a price, and those responsible will soon pay it. That was not a eulogy. That was a targeting order wrapped in religious language. The strike that started the energy war, the trigger that transformed this conflict into an energy war, came on the morning of March 18th. The Israeli Air Force struck natural gas processing facilities at South Pars and Aslu in Iran's Bushehr province. This was the first strike on Iranian natural gas infrastructure in the entire war. South Pars is not simply another gas field. It produces roughly 75% of Iran's total natural gas output. It is the largest natural gas reserve on the planet. And critically, it is connected underground to Qatar's North Field, the same geological deposit. 2 countries extract from opposite ends of it. Axios reported the strike had been coordinated with the White House. The Wall Street Journal separately reported that Trump knew about it in advance and had supported it. Trump subsequently posted publicly that the United States had no involvement and no prior knowledge. The stated rationale was that the strike would signal what could happen next if Iran continued choking the Strait of Hormuz. But the real calculation was more revealing than that. The Trump administration had previously blocked strikes on Iranian oil infrastructure because of the price spike it would cause globally. A senior Israeli official explained that gas was considered less of a concern on the pricing front. Washington did not greenlight this strike for deep strategic reasons. It approved it because it believed natural gas would not move markets the way crude oil would. That calculation proved wrong within hours. Iranian gas flows to Iraq were cut off almost immediately. Iran supplies between 30 and 40% of Iraq's electricity and gas. Baghdad's lights were now directly connected to Israeli targeting decisions. Qatar's foreign ministry condemned the South Pars strike instantly, and not out of solidarity with Tehran. Qatar's spokesperson pointed out that South Pars is a direct extension of Qatar's own North Field. Targeting energy infrastructure at that scale constitutes a threat to global energy security, to the people of the region, and to the environment. Russia condemned the strike as well, noting that South Pars sits in close proximity to the Bushehr nuclear plant, a facility Russia built and continues to help operate. Both ends of the same gas field, struck on the same day. Here is the detail that frames the full horror of March 18th in a single sentence. South Pars and North Field are the same gas formation. They share the same underground reservoir beneath the Persian Gulf. Iran extracts from one side, Qatar extracts from the other. On March 18th, Israel bombed the Iranian extraction point. Hours later, Iran bombed the Qatari processing facility. Both ends of the same gas deposit were struck on the same day by opposing sides of the same war. Qatar condemned both attacks. That is the position Qatar now occupies. Its shared gas field damaged from the Iranian side by Israel, its security partner, and its processing facility destroyed from the Gulf side by Iran, the neighbor it shares that field with. No country on earth has been placed in a worse energy position by a single day of combat since this war began. The economic fallout: Brent crude is trading above $130 per barrel, nearly 50% higher than before the war began. WTI is hovering around $100. Diesel prices in the United States have crossed $5 per gallon for the first time since the 2022 inflation surge. The Federal Reserve held interest rates on March 18th, citing elevated uncertainty from the conflict. U.S. producer prices are climbing at the fastest rate in 7 months. European benchmark gas futures jumped 50% when Qatar first halted production on March 2nd. Asian LNG prices surged 39% the same day. After the South Pars and Ras Laffan strikes, European gas climbed a further 6%. Most people assume the Strait of Hormuz is being physically blocked by Iranian warships. In reality, Iran shut it down with a small number of drone strikes and let the global insurance industry do the rest. Shipping through Hormuz has been sharply curtailed. Hundreds of vessels are anchored and waiting with around 20,000 seafarers stranded as the security situation deteriorated. No insurance coverage means no transit. The most powerful navy in history cannot compel Lloyd's of London to write a war risk policy. Iran did not need a conventional naval blockade. It weaponized commercial risk aversion. A few inexpensive drones, a handful of burning tankers, and the global shipping industry made the decision to stop on its own. Trump called for a naval coalition from China, Japan, South Korea, France, and the United Kingdom to escort vessels through the strait. Germany responded formally, no participation in any military effort to keep the Strait of Hormuz open for as long as this war continues. Greece said no. The UK Prime Minister said Britain would not be drawn into the wider conflict. Nobody came. The International Energy Agency released 400 million barrels from emergency reserves, covering roughly 20 days of normal Hormuz flow and approximately 4 days of total global consumption. The U.S. Treasury eased sanctions on Venezuela to allow American companies to purchase from its state oil company. Iraq struck a deal with Kurdish authorities to push 250,000 additional barrels per day through a pipeline to Turkey. Saudi Arabia began rerouting some crude through Red Sea pipelines. These are not solutions. They are temporary measures buying limited time. And beyond fuel, the Strait of Hormuz carries a significant share of the world's LNG exports that serve as feedstock for nitrogen-based fertilizers. Those fertilizers support the staple grain production that provides more than 40% of global caloric intake. India has invoked emergency powers to protect hundreds of millions of households dependent on liquid petroleum gas. The UN's humanitarian chief warned that millions of people face serious risk if cargo cannot move through the strait safely. This is not only an energy crisis, it is a food crisis in an early stage. The Central unanswered question Iran's foreign minister addressed the wave of assassinations directly. He said the Islamic Republic has a strong political structure with established institutions and that the presence or absence of a single individual does not affect how that structure functions. Whether that is accurate is the defining unanswered question of this entire war. Iran has lost its supreme leader, its top security coordinator, its base commander, and its intelligence minister in 19 days. Tehran says the machine keeps running. But no analyst outside Iran can currently confirm who is making targeting decisions, who holds escalation authority, or whether the civilian government and the IRGC are still operating from a unified strategic plan. 6 American airmen are dead, killed in a KC-135 crash, with their dignified transfer held at Dover on March 18th. The director of the National Counterterrorism Center resigned over the war, citing pressure from Israel. The U.S. intelligence chief told Congress that Iran's government has been degraded but appears intact, and that Iran and its proxies remain capable of striking American bases and interests across the region. The war is 19 days old. It is accelerating. There is no ceasefire framework on any negotiating table. There is no confirmed back channel. And the people who had the institutional standing to build one are being buried in Tehran. The question that no government involved can honestly answer today is not who is winning. It is whether anyone remaining in a position of real authority has a plan for how this ends. Not the version they are telling their own populations, but the version that reflects actual reality on the ground.